The suitcases were already packed. Both of them. Zipped. Waiting on the porch like they'd been there all night. I'd worked a 12-hour shift. I still had my scrubs on. And when I pulled into the driveway at 7 in the morning, the first thing I saw was my own life sitting outside my own front door. My husband Graham was in the doorway. His mother Vivian stood behind him, coat on, purse under her arm, chin lifted the way it always lifted when she was finishing something. She looked at me once, then spoke. 6 years of nothing. That's what you gave my son. I looked past her at Graham. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And in the passenger seat of his truck, window cracked, checking her phone, a young woman. Maybe 23. She was wearing a Holt Motors polo. I picked up both suitcases and walked to my car. 3 houses down, a quiet man had stopped mowing his lawn. He was watching. I didn't know it then, but before the year was over, he was going to find something in a filing cabinet that would unravel every lie they'd told me, starting with the one they'd told me about my own body. My name is Myra. I was a registered nurse in a small Virginia town. I was 34 years old, and I had just been handed my own belongings by a woman who had been engineering my exit from her son's life for 6 full years. This is the story of how I found out the diagnosis was never about me. If you've ever been told something was wrong with you by someone who needed you to believe it, stay with me. And make sure you're subscribed, because what the medical board finds in part 2 is the part nobody in that town expected. Let me walk you through the marriage fast. The way it actually felt. Year 1. We were happy. Small wedding, spring flowers, Vivian paid for everything and mentioned it twice. By December, no pregnancy. The doctor said, give it time. Year 2. Vivian arranged a specialist. Dr. Leland Fry, OBGYN, Barton Women's Health, the only women's clinic in town. A college friend of hers. The best, she called him. He ran panels, ultrasounds, blood work. He sat me down under a buzzing fluorescent light and told me my ovarian reserve was diminished. That my chances were low and dropping. I remember the exact pitch of that light. Year 3. I wanted a second opinion. I'd been reading medical journals on my lunch breaks, the way nurses do when something doesn't sit right. Vivian moved fast. She arranged another specialist in Lynchburg, a colleague of Fry's. Same language. Diminished. Low. Unlikely. I didn't know then that the word unlikely can be manufactured. Year 4. Treatments. Hormones that made me sick. Injections that left bruises across my stomach. Graham watched from the doorway most nights, arms crossed, like he was waiting for a verdict I was never going to deliver. Year 5. I booked an independent clinic in Charlottesville. Made the appointment myself, on my lunch break, without telling anyone. 3 days later, Graham cancelled it. Not Vivian. Graham. He called the clinic directly and cancelled it using my name. Mom already took care of it, he said, when I confronted him that evening. Stop torturing yourself. That was the moment I should have known. But I was tired, and the system around me had been airtight for 5 years, and I didn't understand yet that the air inside was poison. Year 6. Graham started coming home after midnight. I stopped asking where he'd been. I had nothing left to spend on a war I didn't have the full picture for. 2 weeks before the suitcases, I was carrying Vivian's evening blood pressure medication up to her study. 8 o'clock sharp, same as every night. Being useful was the only currency that house accepted. The study door was open a crack. I stopped. I didn't plan to listen. I just heard my name and I stopped. Vivian's voice first. Low, direct. You've wasted 6 years on that woman, Graham. 6 years I cannot get back. Graham, she's my wife, Mom. She cannot give you children. And I will not watch this family name end because you're too sentimental to act. A long pause. The grandfather clock in the foyer. Then Vivian again, I've spoken to the Brewers. Their daughter Kelsey. Young, from a good family. Healthy. Then the line that I've replayed more times than I can count. Not because it hurt the most. Because it was the most honest thing Vivian Holt had ever said to me, even though she didn't know I was listening. You have a choice. File the papers, or I transfer the trust. All of it. The dealerships, the properties, the foundation accounts. Everything. You'll have nothing. Graham said nothing. That silence was his answer. And he gave it freely. Not with reluctance. Not with grief. He simply calculated the cost and chose. I set the medication tray on the hallway table. Walked to the bathroom. Ran cold water over my wrists. Looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment. Then I went back downstairs and finished making dinner. Because that is what you do when you're the only adult in a house full of people who are planning to throw you away. My colleague Gail had been waiting for me to need her. She had coffee ready before I'd even taken off my shoes. She handed me her phone without a word. A photo from a Holt Motors anniversary event, 6 weeks earlier. Graham, center frame, arm around a young woman in a red dress. Kelsey Brewer. Marketing intern, 23. Behind them, Vivian, smiling the smile of someone who has just closed a very satisfying deal. That's not the whole thing, Gail said quietly. Last week she had dinner with Kelsey's parents. She's already running the same play. I looked at the photo for a long time. Not at Graham. At Vivian's face. And I understood something I hadn't fully understood before. The problem had never been whether I could have children. The problem was whether I was the right person to have them. And Vivian had decided the answer 5 years before any doctor said a word to me. The cottage on Orchard Road was small. Humid windows, groaning water pressure, a porch that sagged in the middle. The landlord apologized on the way out. It's not much, he said. It's mine, I said. That first night, I sat outside with instant coffee and watched the sky go dark behind the trees. The yard next door had a southern magnolia, the big ones that bloom heavy in May, filling everything with something sweet and alive. A man came out to mow around 7. Quiet, early 40s, methodical. He moved the mower in straight lines the way someone does who has been doing things alone for a long time. He looked up, saw me, lifted a hand. Evening, he said. Nothing else. He finished, put the mower away, went inside. That was Wyatt Calloway. Former county sheriff. And the quietest person who ever changed my life. The kitchen window jammed the following Saturday. Humidity had swollen the frame overnight. I was standing on a stool, both hands on the sash, when he knocked on the screen door. He fixed it in 30 seconds. I made coffee. We sat on the porch. He talked a little, more than I expected. 8 years as sheriff. Retired when the politics got heavier than the work. His father had passed 3 years ago, a man who'd built something large and missed everything small. He asked about the health center. Good questions. The kind that come from actually listening. So I told him some of it. The years. The treatments. The doors that kept closing before I could reach them. Dr. Fry told me I can't have children, I said. That's why my husband left. Wyatt was quiet for a moment. Something shifted in his expression, something careful and private, like a door opening half an inch. If you ever want a second opinion, he said, from someone who doesn't owe the Holts anything, I might know of a clinic in Richmond. Independent. Good people. He didn't push. He stood, thanked me for the coffee, walked back across the yard. The magnolia between our houses was just beginning to bloom. 3 nights I lay awake with that sentence. From someone who doesn't owe the Holts anything. It was the first time anyone had said that out loud. That owing was even a variable. That the doctors I'd seen might have had a reason to say what they said that had nothing to do with my body. On the 4th night I searched Patient Rights medical records Virginia at 2 in the morning. The answer was clear. Under HIPAA, I had the legal right to request my complete file from any provider. I'd known this technically, every nurse does. But knowing a thing and acting on it are separated by something that feels like fear until the moment you name it. I picked up the phone. Called Barton Women's Health at 8:15 the next morning. "I'll need to check with Dr. Fry," the receptionist said. "It's my legal right," I told her. "I'll put it in writing." Then I called Wyatt. "That clinic, I'd like to go." "I'll make a call," he said. No drama. No speech. The clinic in Richmond was nothing like the small offices Vivian had arranged. Glass and limestone, 3 buildings connected by covered walkways, a fountain in a central courtyard. Independent. Not connected to anyone in Barton or the Holt family or the county's invisible web of favors. Dr. Priya Anand shook my hand like I was a person and not a problem. "Let's start from zero," she said. "Forget everything you were told. We run the full panel, blood work, hormone levels, ultrasound, AMH, and we read what your body says." The draw took 15 minutes. The ultrasound was thorough. She took written notes, not checkboxes. For the first time in 6 years, I was in a room where no one had spoken to Vivian Holt first. The call came 9 days later. I was restocking supply cabinets in exam room 3 when my phone buzzed. I stepped into the break room. Closed the door. Dr. Anand's voice was measured and clear. "Myra. Your AMH levels are within normal range. Your ovarian reserve is healthy. Your hormone panel is consistent with a woman your age who has no fertility impairment." I sat down on the vinyl chair. Stared at the hand hygiene poster on the wall. I'd read it 1,000 times. "Your ultrasound shows normal follicle development. There is no indication, none, of diminished reproductive capacity." I already knew, technically. I'm a nurse. I can read a lab result. But I needed to hear a doctor say it. A real one. One who owed Vivian Holt nothing. "What does that mean, exactly?" I asked. Knowing. Needing it said. "It means," Dr. Anand said, "that based on everything we have tested, there is no medical reason you cannot conceive." I thanked her and hung up. The break room clock ticked. The coffee maker gurgled. 6 years. Every injection. Every night lying awake wondering what was broken inside me. I took a notepad from beside the microwave, tore off a page, wrote down the date and the results, folded it twice, put it in my pocket. And went back to exam room 3 to finish what I'd started. Because that is what steady hands do. 3 weeks after my written request, the envelope arrived from Barton Women's Health. Heavy. Thicker than one patient's chart should be. I set it on the kitchen table. Let the kettle boil. Sat down. Then I opened it the way I open every patient file at work, systematically. Date order. Cross-referencing everything. I found the FSH level Dr. Fry had flagged as concerning. The printed lab value on the original report, 6.8 μ/ml. Normal. Clean. Well within range. But in the margin, in Dr. Fry's own handwriting, 14.2, elevated. Recheck. He hadn't gotten a different result. He had written a different number in the margin of the original report. I set the page down. Stood up. Walked to the window and looked at the magnolia tree for a moment. Then I went back and kept reading. The AMH result, the one he told me was dangerously low? The printed lab report showed a value that any nurse in the country would call perfectly adequate. Another annotation. Another altered number. Page after page. The same handwriting. The same careful redirection. And then I found it. A complete fertility panel, the full battery. Blood work, hormone analysis, the works. Official letterhead from Barton Women's Health. Authenticated stamp at the bottom. Collection date, Sunday, March 12th. I set the page on the table. I have referred patients to Barton Women's Health for 12 years. I know their schedule the way I know my own shift rotation. Monday through Saturday. 8 to 5. Closed Sundays. No exceptions. No weekend overflow. Always closed. I pulled up their website on my phone. Still there. Still the same hours it had always been. Monday through Saturday. Closed Sundays and federal holidays. I looked at the report again. Sunday, March 12th. A complete blood draw. A full panel with values and a physician's signature. From a clinic that was locked. A nurse knows the difference between a clerical error and a fabrication. A wrong date is a typo. A complete lab panel dated on a day the facility did not exist is a forgery. Someone had created this document deliberately. Filed it in my chart deliberately. And used it to convince me, for 6 years, that I was broken. I photographed every page, front and back. Sealed the originals back in the envelope. Wrote the date on the front in pen. Then I opened my laptop and searched how to file a complaint with the Virginia Board of Medicine. I didn't call Graham. I didn't call Vivian. I didn't call Dr. Fry. I made myself a cup of tea and read the complaint form line by line. The magnolia outside was perfectly still. My colleague Gail's husband Warren worked in the county clerk's office. Access to public financial filings, the kind of annual reports nonprofits and family trusts are required to file. I asked Gail if he could pull the Holt Family Trust charitable disbursement records. She didn't ask why. 2 days later, she called me. Warren had them. 6 years of filings. And buried in each one, under a line item labeled Community Health Partnerships, was a payment. Payable to Barton Women's Health. Year 1, $8,000. Year 3, $10,000. Year 5, $12,000. Steady. Increasing. 6 consecutive years. That's not a health partnership, I said. Gail looked at the numbers. Vivian has been paying Fry since before your second appointment. The same 6 years he was telling you that you couldn't have children. We sat at her dining table while her kids slept upstairs. The house smelled like laundry detergent and ordinary life. That's the thing about extraordinary evil. It always smells like something ordinary from the outside. I added the documents to the folder. Drove home. And on my kitchen counter, still sitting there, was an envelope in Vivian's handwriting. Mrs. Graham Holt. A charity gala invitation. Still my married name, whether out of carelessness or one last small cruelty, I couldn't tell. I picked it up. Turned it over. And I thought, she's chosen her arena. I've chosen mine. I set the invitation face down and opened the medical board complaint form. 4 days later, Dr. Anand called. She had reviewed the Barton Women's Health records I'd sent her, my original file alongside the new results from Richmond. Myra, she said carefully. I need to ask you something. Did your husband ever undergo a semen analysis as part of your fertility workup? Dr. Fry told us Graham's results were normal, I said. He told us the issue was mine. A pause. The pattern I'm seeing, she said, between Dr. Fry's documented findings and our independent testing, it suggests the diagnostic focus was misdirected. Deliberately. The alterations in your chart are consistent with someone trying to redirect the source of the reproductive difficulty away from another party. She couldn't say it outright without testing him. She didn't need to. I'm a nurse. I translated it. The records had been manipulated to protect the Holt name. To protect Graham. To make sure that if this marriage ended, it ended with me as the problem. And the only person with the means, the motive, and a decade-long friendship with Dr. Fry was the woman who had shown up on my porch with the paperwork already prepared. I thanked Dr. Anand. She told me she'd document everything. That she'd make herself available to the medical board whenever they needed her. I sat at my kitchen table with 2 folders in front of me. On the left, my new results. Normal. Healthy. Capable. On the right, 6 years of constructed lies. Altered numbers. Forged dates. Payments. A diagnosis built entirely from someone else's need to protect their bloodline. I closed both folders. Stacked them together. And for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't angry at myself for believing it. I was a 34-year-old woman with 12 years of medical training who had been systematically deceived by people she trusted, inside a system that had been paid to deceive her. I was angry at the people who built the lie. And the medical board was about to meet all of them. The complaint was filed on a Thursday. Dr. Anand submitted her clinical analysis the following week. Warren's financial records were attached. The forged Sunday lab panel was Exhibit A. I don't have the board's response yet. But I will. If you want to be here when that letter arrives, and when Graham Holt walks into a meeting he was not expecting, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because what the investigation uncovered about Dr. Fry's other patients in Barton, that's a story bigger than mine.